The dust never settled on Nexus 9. It swirled constantly, a toxic mixture of industrial waste and crushed dreams that painted everything in shades of gray and despair. Here, at the furthest edge of known space, Zora Kell moved like a ghost, her scaled skin a dull blue that seemed to absorb the misery around her. Her daughter Mira walked behind her, small and thin, her large eyes constantly scanning the harsh landscape of the mining colony. At just 8 standard cycles old, Mira had already learned to be invisible, a survival skill her mother had painfully taught her. The processing plant loomed ahead, a monstrous structure of rusted metal and crackling energy conduits. Zora Kell's work permit was a digital tattoo on her wrist, constantly blinking with warnings and deductions. Each shift was a battle for survival, each credit a lifeline that kept her and Mira from complete destruction. "Mama," Mira whispered, her voice barely audible above the constant industrial hum. "Are we going to eat today?" Zora Kell's heart broke, but her face remained stone-like. She couldn't show weakness. Not here. Not after everything that had happened. The memory of her past, her brilliant research, her once respected position in the Lyrian scientific community, felt like a distant dream. 3 cycles ago, her groundbreaking research had been declared heretical. Her colleagues, her friends, her entire clan had turned against her in a matter of solar days. One moment, she was a respected xenogenetic researcher. The next, she was nothing more than a disgraced outcast. The processing plant's security scanner flickered as Zora Kell approached. Her identification chip triggered a series of red warnings: her criminal status, her exile, her complete removal from Lyrian society. The machine beeped aggressively, but a tired maintenance worker simply waved her through. She was just another throwaway worker in a place where nobody counted. Inside, the heat was unbearable. Massive processing units converted raw mineral compounds into energy resources for distant star systems. Zora Kell's job was to monitor the most toxic sections, a task no other species would accept. Her biological adaptations made her slightly more resistant to the dangerous radiation and chemical exposure. Mira wasn't allowed inside. She waited in a small, enclosed shelter near the plant's outer perimeter. It was a makeshift arrangement, a metal container with minimal life support, filled with discarded data pads and a small heating unit. The colony provided basic child-minding facilities for worker parents, but those were for citizens, for people with status, not for exiles like them. As Zora Kell worked, her mind drifted to the research that had destroyed her life. She had been close, so close, to understanding how different species could genetically adapt to each other. Her theories challenged everything the Lyrian Confederation believed about biological boundaries. And for that, they had erased her. The shift was long and brutal. Toxic chemicals seeped through her protective gear, leaving burns that would heal but never completely disappear. Each movement was calculated, each action precise. One mistake could mean instant death in these processing units. When her shift finally ended, Zora Kell collected her meager earnings. The digital display showed another day of barely surviving. Credits that would barely cover their shelter, their minimal food, their continued existence. Mira waited, her eyes bright with hope. She knew better than to ask about food immediately. Instead, she helped her mother remove the protective gear, checking for any new burns or injuries. They had a routine, a dance of survival that they had perfected over the past 3 cycles. "We'll find a way," Zora Kell murmured, more to herself than to Mira. "We always do." But deep inside, she wondered how much longer they could continue like this. In the vast, uncaring universe of Nexus 9, they were nothing more than forgotten particles, waiting for a miracle that seemed increasingly impossible. The fever hit Mira like a solar storm. One moment she was helping her mother sort through discarded data pads, the next she was burning up, her small body trembling uncontrollably. Zora Kell knew the symptoms immediately: toxic exposure from the industrial zone where she worked. "No," she whispered, pressing her scaled hand against Mira's forehead. The heat was intense, dangerous. Chemical burns were spreading across the child's skin, creating intricate patterns of deep red and angry purple. Nexus 9's medical facilities were just 3 kilometers away, close enough to see the gleaming white dome from their shelter, but might as well have been on another planet. Zarakel had no medical credits, no citizen status, no hope of treatment. She began her desperate journey, carrying Mira's limp body. The colony's main street was a river of indifference. Alien workers from dozens of species moved around them, carefully avoiding eye contact. Some looked away in disgust. Others simply didn't care. Her first stop was the Krell merchant quarter. The Krell were known for their advanced medical technology and trading networks. Zarakel approached a group of massive, shell-armored merchants who were discussing trade routes. "Please," she said, her voice breaking. "My daughter needs medical help." The lead Krell turned, his multiple eyes scanning her with cold calculation. The digital translator built into his communication implant flickered to life. "Exile status confirmed," the mechanical voice announced. "No medical access for unregistered species." One of the younger Krell merchants started to say something, but was silenced by a sharp gesture from the elder. Zarakel felt something die inside her. Mira's breathing was becoming more labored. Next, she tried the Vor diplomatic envoy station. The Vor were known for their compassion, their commitment to interspecies welfare. Surely they would help. The reception area was a monument to bureaucratic perfection. Gleaming surfaces, holographic displays, and absolute emptiness. A Vor administrative drone looked at her, its multiple sensory stocks measuring her worth in milliseconds. "Medical assistance requires 3-tier verification," the drone stated flatly. "Exile status prevents primary clearance." Mira moaned softly. Her skin was changing color, the toxic exposure creating dangerous chemical reactions. Zarakel knew they were running out of time. She approached passing starship captains, traders, anyone who might show a spark of compassion. Each encounter was a knife to her hope. A Zinthari trader laughed. "An exile seeking help. You're less than space dust." A Nexus 9 security patrol simply scanned her and moved on, their robotic eyes showing no sign of recognition that she was even alive. As the colony's artificial sun began to set, casting long shadows of industrial machinery, Zarakel realized the terrible truth. They were completely alone. No one would help them. No one cared if Mira lived or died. She found herself in a small, forgotten corner of the colony. Abandoned machinery and broken storage containers created a makeshift shelter. Mira's breathing was becoming shallow. Her small body was burning up, the toxic chemicals turning her skin into a canvas of pain. "I'm sorry," Zarakel whispered, holding her daughter close. "I'm so sorry." The colony continued around them. Ships came and went. Trades were made. Lives continued. And here, in this forgotten corner, a mother prepared to lose everything. Mira's eyes flickered open for a moment. Despite the fever, despite the pain, she managed a weak smile. "It's okay, Mama," she said. "We're together." Those words broke Zarakel completely. Tears she had held back for cycles finally came. Silent, desperate tears of a mother who was about to lose the only thing that mattered in the universe. The Pathfinder looked like nothing special. A mid-sized trading vessel that had seen better days. Its hull was patched in multiple places, and carbon scoring told stories of narrow escapes and tough journeys. But Marcus Rodriguez wasn't interested in looking impressive. He was interested in survival. At the Nexus 9 trading hub, Marcus moved differently from other traders. Where they conducted business with quick, sharp movements, he observed. Where they spoke loudly, he listened carefully. His eyes, a mixture of determination and something deeper, compassion, scanned the crowded marketplace. The marketplace was a chaos of sound and movement. Alien species from a dozen different star systems haggled, traded, and survived. Holographic displays flickered with product information. Automated translation devices hummed constantly, bridging communication gaps. That's when he saw them. In a forgotten corner, nearly invisible to everyone else, sat Zarakel. Her blue-scaled skin was dulled by despair. In her arms, Mira looked more like a shadow than a child. The toxic exposure had left intricate, painful patterns on her skin, a testament to the harsh industrial environment of Nexus 9. Marcus had seen suffering before. As a former xenobiological research support specialist, he understood more about alien physiology than most humans. But this was different. This was something that cut deeper. A group of local enforcers approached the pair. These weren't official peacekeepers. They were hired muscle, the kind that solved problems through intimidation and violence. Their leader, a massive Vor with cybernetic enhancements, looked down at Zarakel. Colony maintenance regulations, the Vor said, his translation device rendering the words in a flat, emotionless tone. Unregistered residents must be removed from public spaces. Zarakel didn't even look up. She was beyond fear, beyond hope. Her entire focus was on keeping Mira alive. Marcus knew he had a choice. He could walk away. This wasn't his problem. Hundreds of traders passed by such scenes every solar cycle. It was the way of things in places like Nexus 9. But something stopped him. His adaptive combat suit, a remnant of his previous life, began to adjust. Nano-responsive materials shifted, creating a protective configuration. Integrated communication systems activated silently. "Excuse me," Marcus said, stepping forward. The Vor turned, surprised by the humans' intervention. Humans were rare in this part of the galaxy and rarely involved themselves in local disputes. "This is not your concern," the Vor's translator clicked. Marcus didn't move. "Actually," he said calmly, "it is." The marketplace went quiet. Traders and workers stopped, sensing something was about to happen. Holographic displays flickered. Translation devices seemed to hold their breath. The Vor's cybernetic enhancements began to power up. Weapon systems hummed to life. Marcus's suit responded automatically, a dance of technology more advanced than anything in this sector. "Walk away," Marcus said. The words were soft, but something in his tone made the Vor hesitate. Zarakel looked up, her eyes a mixture of confusion and desperate hope. Mira remained unconscious, her breathing shallow. Marcus knelt beside them, his movements slow and deliberate. "I can help," he said to Zarakel, "but you'll need to trust me." The marketplace held its collective breath. In the harsh world of Nexus 9, where survival was a daily battle, a human had just done something unexpected, something that defied the cold calculations of survival. He had chosen compassion. The Pathfinder's medical bay was unlike any medical facility Zarakel had ever seen. Soft blue light pulsed gently, creating a calming atmosphere. Advanced holographic displays showed Mira's vital signs with intricate, shifting patterns. Medical nanobots moved almost invisibly, working to neutralize the toxic chemicals in her small body. Marcus worked with a precision that spoke of years of specialized training. His hands moved quickly, adjusting complex medical equipment that seemed to anticipate his every thought. Zarakel watched, both terrified and fascinated. "The toxic exposure is complex," Marcus explained, his voice calm and professional. "Your daughter's biological system has unique resistance markers. Fascinating." "Really?" Zarakel said nothing. She had heard those words before. Fascinating, but never with the genuine respect Marcus seemed to offer. In her previous life, such words were often followed by academic dismissal or political maneuvering. Mira's fever began to break. The angry chemical patterns on her skin slowly faded, replaced by a softer, healing glow. The nanobots worked meticulously, repairing cellular damage that would have killed most other species. "How?" Zarakel finally whispered. "How are you doing this?" Marcus looked up, a small smile crossing his face. "Your research," he said simply. "The work they try to suppress." He pulled up a holographic display. Complex genetic sequences danced between them, a language of life more intricate than words. Zarakel recognized her own research patterns immediately, but something was different. Marcus had taken her initial theories and expanded them in ways she had never imagined. "You know my work," she said. It wasn't a question. "I more than know it," Marcus replied. "I've been following your research for years. When the Lyrian Confederation tried to erase your findings, some of us made sure the work survived." The medical bay felt different now, no longer just a place of healing, but a sanctuary of scientific possibility. Mira stirred. Her eyes opened, clearer and brighter than they had been in cycles. She looked at Marcus with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "Are you going to help us?" she asked directly. Marcus laughed, a genuine, warm sound that seemed out of place in the sterile medical environment. "Yes," he said, "I'm going to help you." Over the next few solar days, Zara Kell learned more about Marcus. He wasn't just a trader. He was a bridge between scientific communities, someone who collected and protected research that powerful institutions wanted to suppress. The Pathfinder became their home. It was more than a ship. It was a mobile research station, filled with equipment from dozens of different species. Each room told a story of scientific exploration, of knowledge preserved and protected. Mira began to recover quickly. The nanobots had not just healed her, they had strengthened her. Her biological systems showed increased adaptability, a testament to the advanced medical technology and Marcus's understanding of her unique genetic structure. "Your mother's research," Marcus explained to Mira, "is about understanding how different species can adapt, can survive together." Zara Kell watched her daughter. For the first time in cycles, there was hope in her eyes. Hope and something more. A spark of scientific curiosity that reminded Zara Kell of herself before everything fell apart. As the Pathfinder moved silently through space, leaving Nexus 9 far behind, Zara Kell realized something fundamental had changed. They were no longer alone. They were no longer forgotten. They had been found. The research lab aboard the Pathfinder was unlike any scientific space Zara Kell had ever seen. Holographic displays danced with complex genetic sequences, while adaptive research interfaces shifted and changed like living organisms. Marcus moved between stations with an energy that spoke of genuine passion. "Your original research," Marcus explained, pulling up a series of complex diagrams, "was revolutionary. The Lyrian Confederation didn't suppress it because it was wrong. They suppressed it because it was too right." Zara Kell studied the displays carefully. Her own research, which had once been her pride and her downfall, now looked different. Marcus had not just preserved her work, he had evolved it. Mira watched from a special observation area, her recently healed body now equipped with advanced medical monitors. The nanobots that had saved her continued to study her unique biological system, collecting data with each passing moment. "The key," Marcus said, his fingers dancing across holographic controls, his adaptive symbiosis, not just between different species, but between biological systems and technological interfaces. He showed her a demonstration. Complex genetic sequences began to merge with technological patterns. Where traditional research saw boundaries, Marcus saw connections. It was a fundamentally different way of thinking, something truly human. The Pathfinder's computer system, an advanced AI with multiple processing layers, began to analyze the data. It wasn't just processing information. It was learning, adapting, understanding. Most scientific communities, Marcus explained, see technology and biology as separate. Humans are different. We see them as connected systems. Zara Kell remembered her past, the academic conferences, the political meetings, the endless debates where narrow thinking always won. Here, everything felt different. Possible. Mira approached a special interactive display. Her touch activated complex holographic projections. The research interfaces responded to her, adapting in real time to her unique biological signature. "Your daughter," Marcus said, "is becoming a living example of the research you started." The implications were enormous. The genetic adaptations Marcus had refined could mean survival for species facing environmental challenges. Planets thought uninhabitable could become home. Species on the brink of extinction could find new hope. Days turned into weeks. The Pathfinder became a mobile research station, collecting data from multiple star systems. Marcus had a network, other scientists and researchers who had been waiting for exactly this kind of breakthrough. The Lyrian Confederation tried to bury your work, he told Zara Kell one evening. But they didn't understand something fundamental about scientific discovery. What's that? She asked. You can't stop an idea that's ready to be born. Transmission requests began to come in. Scientific communities from different star systems wanted to understand their research. The suppressed work was becoming a beacon of hope. Mira's biological adaptations became their primary research focus. She was changing, not just healing, but evolving. The nanobots and her unique genetic structure were creating something entirely new. She's proof, Marcus would say, watching Mira interact with the research interfaces. That adaptation is survival. Zara Kell watched her daughter and realized something profound had happened. They were no longer running. They were no longer hiding. They were creating something that could change entire civilizations. The Pathfinder moved silently through space, a vessel of hope. Marcus, Zara Kell, and Mira were more than passengers now. They were pioneers. Science was their weapon. Understanding was their shield. And they were just beginning. The first transmission came at solar midnight. Harsh, encrypted signals that cut through the Pathfinder's communication systems like digital blades. Marcus recognized the signature immediately. Lyrian Confederation diplomatic encryption. They found us, he said quietly. Zara Kell didn't need to ask who they were. The Confederation had been hunting her since her research threatened their carefully constructed scientific hierarchies. Now, with Marcus's improvements to her work, the threat was even greater. Mira looked up from her research station, her recently enhanced biological systems already detecting the tension in the room. Are we in danger? She asked, her voice calm but curious. Marcus smiled. Danger was something humans understood intimately. Not danger, he corrected. An opportunity. The Pathfinder's advanced communication systems began to decode the incoming messages. Diplomatic threats mixed with scientific warnings. The Lyrian Confederation wanted their research stopped. More importantly, they wanted Zara Kell and Mira returned. They're using multiple communication networks, Marcus explained, his fingers dancing across holographic displays. Trading routes, scientific channels, even underground information markets. Zara Kell watched in amazement. In her previous life, such an attack would have destroyed her. Now, it felt like a challenge. Marcus began to work, not just defending, but actively countering. He had a network, other researchers, traders, and scientific rebels who had been waiting for exactly this moment. Each transmission from the Confederation was met with a carefully crafted response. Scientific papers appeared in multiple star system databases. Their research, no longer suppressed, began to spread faster than the Confederation could contain it. Each publication was a weapon, each data point a strategic move. Trading networks became their allies. Independent traders who valued knowledge over political boundaries began to share their work. Marcus had spent years building these connections, creating a web of support that the Confederation couldn't easily break. They're going to try economic pressure, Marcus explained to Zara Kell. Block our trading routes. Cut off our resource access. Mira watched, learning. Her enhanced biological systems were absorbing everything, not just the scientific data, but the strategic thinking. The Pathfinder became a mobile fortress of knowledge. Each star system they passed became another point of transmission. Their research spread like a living network, impossible to contain. Diplomatic pressure increased. Official communications from the Lyrian Confederation demanded the immediate return of Zara Kell and Mira. Trading licenses were threatened. Scientific collaborations were put at risk. But Marcus had prepared for this. Years of working at the edges of scientific communities had taught him how to navigate political storms. The most dangerous thing for a corrupt system, he told Zara Kell, is an idea that can't be stopped. Their research was more than just scientific data. It was a promise of survival for species facing environmental challenges. Planets thought uninhabitable could become home. Species on the brink of extinction could find new hope. The Confederation's attacks became more desperate. They tried to discredit Zarakel's original research. They spread false information about their current work. But each attempt only made more scientists curious. Mira's unique biological adaptations became their strongest weapon. She was living proof of their research, a child who could survive where others would perish. Each scan, each data point was another crack in the Confederation's arguments. Days turned into weeks. The political battle continued. But something fundamental had changed. They were no longer running. They were no longer hiding. They were fighting back. The Pathfinder moved silently through space, a beacon of hope. Marcus, Zarakel, and Mira were more than passengers now. They were revolutionaries. Science was their weapon. Understanding was their shield. And they were just beginning. The quiet moments were the most revealing. Between scientific breakthroughs and political battles, Marcus and Zarakel found something unexpected: understanding. Their first real conversation happened during a routine system maintenance. The Pathfinder's navigation systems hummed softly, surrounded by the gentle blue glow of emergency lighting. Mira was asleep in her research pod, her breathing synchronized with the ship's rhythmic pulse. "Why did you help us?" Zarakel asked. It was a question she had been holding since their first meeting on Nexus 9. Marcus didn't answer immediately. His hands continued their careful work on the navigation systems, fingers moving with practiced precision. "Some fights are bigger than one person," he finally said. Zarakel understood. In her previous life, scientific research was about personal achievement. Here, with Marcus, it felt different. It was about survival, about possibility. Their work had changed them both. Zarakel's rigid scientific training was softening, learning to see connections where she once saw only boundaries. Marcus's practical approach was being tempered by her theoretical depth. Mira watched them carefully. At 9 standard cycles, she was more than just a child. She was a living experiment, her enhanced biological systems constantly adapting, learning. The ship's AI began to integrate their research in ways neither had anticipated. Technological systems and biological understanding merged, creating something entirely new. Marcus called it adaptive intelligence. Zarakel saw it as the future. Their personal connection grew slowly, not a sudden passion, but a deep, careful understanding. Marcus respected Zarakel's scientific brilliance. She appreciated his practical approach to survival. Some nights, when the ship moved silently through the dark spaces between star systems, they would discuss their pasts. Marcus talked about his work supporting scientific missions. Zarakel shared stories of her research before the Lyrian Confederation's betrayal. Mira became their bridge. Her unique biological adaptations were a constant reminder of what they could achieve together. She moved between their research stations, absorbing knowledge like other children might absorb sunlight. The Lyrian Confederation's attacks continued, but they were no longer just defending. They were creating. Their research began to attract attention from progressive scientific communities. Independent researchers, traders, and explorers started to see them as more than just fugitives. They were pioneers. Marcus taught Zarakel how humans approached problem solving. It wasn't just about data. It was about imagination, about seeing possibilities where others saw dead ends. Zarakel showed Marcus the depth of her original research, how different species could truly understand each other, not just survive near each other. Their personal transformation mirrored their scientific work. 2 different approaches, finding a way to work together, to create something greater than themselves. Mira was their greatest achievement, a child who could adapt, who could survive, who represented hope. The nights grew longer, the research deeper, their connection more profound. They were no longer just saving themselves. They were creating a new way of understanding life itself. One evening, As the ship's artificial environment created a soft twilight, Marcus looked at Zara Kell differently. Not just as a fellow researcher, but as something more. "We're more than just survivors," he said. Zara Kell understood. They were creators, builders of possibility. The Pathfinder moved silently through space, a vessel of hope, a home, a promise of what could be. Marcus reached out. Zara Kell's scaled hand met his. No words were necessary. They had found each other. In the vast, cold darkness of space, against all odds, the attack came without warning. The Pathfinder's hull vibrated with the first plasma strikes, emergency systems flickering to life with a deep, pulsing alarm. Mira was already in her protective pod before Marcus or Zara Kell could call her. Her enhanced biological systems responded faster than human or Lyrian reflexes could comprehend. "Lyrian Confederation Task Force," Marcus said, his voice calm despite the incoming assault. 4 heavy cruisers, fully armed scientific suppression units. Zara Kell's fingers flew across the ship's defensive systems, but these weren't typical defensive protocols. They had been working on something different, a system that was part technology, part biological adaptation. The first wave of attack drones approached. Typically, they would slice through most ships' defenses like molecular blades through soft tissue. But the Pathfinder was different. Marcus and Zara Kell's research had transformed the ship itself. Its hull began to shift, adaptive materials creating complex defensive patterns. Where traditional ships would have shields, this vessel had something more: a living, breathing defense system. "Executing adaptive response protocol," the ship's AI announced. Its voice was no longer mechanical. It had learned. It had grown. The attack drones hit an unexpected barrier. The Pathfinder's hull didn't just block their attacks. It absorbed them, converted them, turned destructive energy into something else entirely. "They want to destroy our research," Zara Kell said, "but they don't understand what we've created." Mira watched from her pod. Her biological systems were interconnected with the ship's defenses. She wasn't just a passenger. She was part of the system. The Lyrian cruisers fired their main weapons, genetic disruptors designed to break down complex biological systems. Weapons that had suppressed countless species, weapons that had kept scientific communities under control for generations. But these weapons met something unexpected. The Pathfinder didn't just defend. It responded. Adaptive technologies that Marcus and Zara Kell had developed began to broadcast a signal. Not a weapon, not a defense, something more complex. Information. Their entire research database, every breakthrough, every discovery, began to transmit, not just to the attacking ships, but to every scientific network in the surrounding star systems. The Lyrian Task Force found themselves exposed. Their own suppression tactics, their political manipulations, their scientific fraud, all of it began to stream into public databases. "They thought they could control knowledge," Marcus said quietly. They were wrong. One by one, the Lyrian cruisers began to lose power. Not destroyed, not defeated in battle, simply rendered obsolete by the very system they sought to suppress. Zara Kell looked at Marcus. They had become more than researchers, more than partners. They were revolutionaries. The ship's AI began to compile the battle data. Each moment of the confrontation became a learning experience, a chance to evolve. Mira emerged from her protective pod. Her eyes were different, brighter, more aware. "We won," she said. It wasn't a question. The surrounding space was filled with disabled Lyrian vessels, but they weren't destroyed. They were transformed, stripped of their ability to suppress, forced into transparency. "Not just one," Marcus corrected. "We changed everything." The Pathfinder moved silently through space, no longer just a ship, no longer just a research vessel, a beacon of a new kind of understanding. They had faced the system that tried to destroy them, and they had won, not through violence, but through knowledge. Zara Kell took Marcus's hand. Mira watched, her enhanced systems recording every moment. The universe was about to change, and they were leading the way. The Research Institute rose from the surface of New Horizon, a planet that, just cycles ago, had been considered uninhabitable. Its gleaming structures reflected the light of twin suns, a testament to everything Marcus, Zarakel, and Mira had accomplished. Marcus stood beside Zarakel, their hands intertwined. They were more than partners now, more than researchers. They were architects of a new understanding. "We did it," Zarakel said softly. Mira approached, her biological systems now a perfect blend of human adaptability and Lyrian scientific precision. At 10 standard cycles, she was already conducting research that would have taken most scientists entire lifetimes to understand. The Pathfinder, now more than just a ship, sat nearby. Its adaptive technologies had become the foundation of a new approach to space exploration. No longer were ships just machines. They were living systems, capable of learning, adapting, surviving. Their victory against the Lyrian Confederation had changed everything. The public exposure of the scientific suppression had triggered a massive shift in how different species approached knowledge. Research was no longer a tool of control. It was a path to understanding. Species from across multiple star systems now came to New Horizon. Researchers, traders, explorers, all seeking to understand the revolutionary work that had started with a desperate escape from Nexus 9. Marcus watched Zarakel as she worked. Her scaled skin caught the light of the research displays, creating patterns that seemed to dance with the information flowing around them. She was no longer the exiled scientist from Nexus 9. She was a beacon of hope. Mira moved between research stations, her enhanced biological systems processing information at speeds that would have been impossible cycles ago. She was more than a child. She was a living example of their research, proof that adaptation was the key to survival. The formal ceremony was simple, but its implications were enormous. Marcus and Zarakel were not just being recognized. They were being celebrated. "Your work," the lead scientific ambassador said, "has changed everything we understand about survival, about connection." Marcus thought back to that moment on Nexus 9. A dying child, a desperate mother, a human who chose to help when no one else would. Zarakel's research, once suppressed, was now the foundation of a new approach to interspecies understanding. Their adaptive technologies were being used to help species survive on planets once thought impossible to inhabit. The Lyrian Confederation had tried to destroy them. Instead, they had created something more powerful than any political system: hope. Mira stepped forward. She began to explain their research, not as a child, but as a scientist. Her words bridged languages, species, entire ways of thinking. She was living proof of what was possible when barriers were removed. The Research Institute was more than a building. It was a promise that knowledge could not be controlled. That survival was about adaptation. That understanding was the most powerful weapon in the universe. Marcus looked at Zarakel. They had found each other in the most unexpected way: a human and a Lyrian, an outcast and a traitor. Two people who chose to see possibility where others saw only limitation. As the twin suns set on New Horizon, casting long shadows across the Research Institute, they knew their journey was far from over. It was just beginning. Mira stood between them, a bridge between species, a living example of what they had created. They were more than survivors now. They were creators of a new future.